I hope everyone's having a great time. I know for myself, I love the idea, there's colliding of ideas that are happening. This morning I had a really engaging conversation with a gentleman from Alberta that was over on the agriculture side, and you know, I think there's some really interesting conversations coming out of this. I was hoping that this morning's would go on for longer and longer, so I'm glad to hear that this is continuing on. So yes, I'm part of the Innovations branch. It's a small group, a fairly new group that we're building out. And I am very fortunate because I get to work with all these water champions and water experts internally and externally on a day-to-day basis. And they really be able to give us a bit of a bird's eye view on where some of the issues are and some of the opportunities and where some of the real needs are. And in our group, we're constantly looking at opportunities to be able to look at problems in a different way. We spend a lot of time looking at trying to imagine what the future would look like, what's the art of the possible, and always with a goal of engaging and applying innovation. I guess where the sandbox that we're in a lot of the time is around municipalities and communities and sustainability. And we're well aware of a lot of the challenges that those municipalities and communities are facing as they invest and sort of build out a lot of their infrastructure. So we have a lot of initiatives underway. A lot of those have to do with deferring or being able to reduce costs, capital costs and life cycle costs, and always with focus on environment and effective practices. We go the gamut of being able to look at sort of how do we make sure that the infrastructure, so that would be optimization to, I think the conversation this morning, there were some about resource recovery, and of course our foundational piece is the Showcasing Water Innovation Initiative that is all about trying to move communities from their traditional way of looking at things to be able to embrace new innovative, cost-effective solutions. And just to give you an idea of sort of the collaborative approach on that, we have over 68 communities involved. We've got 55 businesses, 45 technologies, and a lot of universities and research facilities available on that. We've got 32 leading communities around Ontario that are looking at all different parts of water. So I want to spend most of my time reflecting on what we talked about this morning. You know, every community faces their own unique challenges. I wouldn't want to have been the person who told in Las Vegas, told those people that they couldn't have grass in their front yard anymore and mandate conservation. I think that's a real challenge, and I think that Pat was able to show us a little bit about what changing attitudes is all about, and you know, the group did not realize the value of water, but they really had to think about that problem differently, and you know, try to bring groups of people that are very competitive, that very diverse, trying to find that line of interest where there was that common destiny and moving the whole group together, and that they're part of the solution. I think what resonated with me and what I struggle with on a regular basis is trying to find that common story and line that everyone can come along on the path to be able to look at the risk, having those common conversations about risk and exposure, and being able to get that change. And then the other part was the long-term plan and making sure that it's resilient, but also looking out far enough and making sure that you're checking it every year and making sure it's adaptive. Water resource management is a huge, huge problem for Singapore. They had to think about the problem differently. There was no question about that. Harry expressed that this morning. And that they've turned, you know, they've really turned a vulnerability into a strategic asset where they're now able to supply all the water they need, at least for now. And I think he really made that point, as they're always looking at the future. It's really the result of a lot of foresight of their leaders making some of those hard decisions that they had, and good water management. Boy, it's not easy to have that integrated water management, close the loop as well as look at the whole sort of cycle. And the other part that I am always aware of and struggling with is just how do you embed that in a culture, and hopefully we'll get further into that conversation when we talk about it. I don't want to leave off on Jean-François and what he talked about. We didn't talk enough about smart cities, but it is something with some of the projects we work with. We are definitely a world that's increasingly being instrumented, interconnected, intelligent, and it gives us a real opportunity to think about problems differently as a result of that. And I think that you know, if you can integrate things against existing platforms and look at things in real time, boy, you know, you're monitoring it that way. And if you put the analytics and the data to that, you can have very, sort of the insights to that, you can have very powerful data. And I think there's a lot of communities that are moving along that platform of smart cities. Southern Ontario Water Consortium, along with the Grand River, is doing that in the Smarter River project. And I think that Charles, you know, what he spoke about this morning really resonated with me. They need to protect the ecosystem and to protect the watershed, and we really need to think about problems differently and do business differently, as he said. I must admit, I think that with a lot of the projects that I'm involved in, we look at projects locally and we look at them, you know, at where our community problems are. And I think he made a good point about stressing the global part of that and how we have to look at not just that, but the systems and how all those systems interconnect and what the relationship is to that, and so that we're not sort of just looking in a narrow vacuum. We're working on a project right now along with the US EPA Global Initiative on Phosphorus, where from, you know, potentially we could be looking at a cold climate option for them and bringing our Ontario expertise to that. So just to finish off, the line, I guess, I see between all of the different people that shared that great information this morning was to think about problems differently. I really do think we have to reimagine where they are and look for that third option to make sure that we have a long-term vision that's holistic and system-based and looking at the relationship between those systems. And I'd like to dive into this a little bit further. I'm a government person, but I do have a different perspective, is making sure that we have sound water policy. I think all of the people this morning talked about, you know, that there's, you do have to have the political commitment. You have to make sure that you've got the determination to implement those tough decisions along the way on that, and the collaboration and engaging wide, diverse groups of people, and making sure that you value those partnerships and that you really listen to them. I know for us, reaching out to a lot of different groups and being able to help them informing us has been incredible in terms of building strong projects along with that. Research plays an integral part, and it's really at the start, and it's a foundational part. And I have to put a plug in for innovation, because I think that we have to constantly be looking at that and be looking at new ways. So I look forward to a good discussion here.